Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today I want to go over a few smaller news items that I haven't been over, as well as talk a little bit about some new little juicy little gossip that we've been hearing as well. So I'm going to be basically doing all of that. So this is going to be a sit back, relax video, get a drink, and I'm going to take you through all the latest and greatest Doctor Who news. Subscribe if you're new, that would be appreciated as well. We're trying to get to 30,000 and we're less than 300 away. Can you believe it? I can't. We might actually make it by Christmas. So any support would be greatly appreciated, and let's dive right in. So first of all, you've all probably seen this, but it was announced that From the Depths for the very first time, a special re-edited edition of classic Doctor Who adventure, The Sea Devils, heads to BBC iPlayer and BBC 4 on 7th of December to coincide with the launch of The War Between the Land and the Sea. There's more information on the website, so I'm going to give that a read. A special re-edited edition of the classic Doctor Who adventure, The Sea Devils, head to BBC iPlayer and BBC 4 on 7th of December. Fans are set to be transported back to 1972 with a newly re-edited version of the classic Who story, The Sea Devils, airing on BBC iPlayer from 6 AM and BBC 4 at 7 PM on Sunday 7th of December. Ahead of the Who's highly anticipated return in The War Between Land and Sea on 8:30 on BBC iPlayer and BBC One. This new 90-minute blockbuster special condenses the original 6-part adventure into a feature-length experience with updated sound design by Mark Ayers and an enhanced score featured in The War Between the Land and the Sea created by the legendary Lorne Balfe, which has been woven together with Markham Hulk's original groundbreaking 1972 music. The Sea Devils stars John Pertwee, who played the Third Doctor between 1970 and 1974 alongside Casey Manning as companion Joe Grant, and features the iconic villain The Master, played by Roger Delgado, written by Malcolm Hulke and directed by Michael E. Bryant. The story introduced audiences to the formidable aquatic species, the Sea Devils. Russell T Davies showrunner said, 52 years after they rose from the depths, it's Sea Devil night across the BBC. A great idea never dies, and viewers, young and old, can now heed their warning. Watch the seas. The special version of The Sea Devils will air on BBC iPlayer from 6 AM and BBC 4 on 7 PM on Sunday, 7th of December, and will be followed by a double bill of The War Between the Land and the Sea at 8:30 PM on BBC iPlayer and BBC One. The Sea Devils is produced by Bad Wolf with the BBC, blah, 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 blah. There we go. So essentially, yeah, we're getting a new re-edited version of The Sea Devils to coincide with the release of The War Between Land and the Sea. So this is kind of our replacement for a colorization. And I've seen some like kind of conflicting opinions on this, so I want to give my thoughts. Obviously, the big deviation in this compared to previous iterations of things like this we've had is that historically they've been of black and white stories. So one of the main aspects of these re-releases or reissues, the big appeal of them is you get to see them in color. Obviously with the Sea Devils it already exists in color, so that kind of novelty isn't there quite as much, and it has been re-edited a number of times, one by the original director back in the 70s, I believe, for an omnibus version, and then again for the Blu-rays as well. So I'm curious to see what they actually change here. Obviously it's interesting, it's going to have some of the soundtrack of the new show by Lorne Balfe. I still can't believe they got Lorne Balfe to do it, to be honest. That's a pretty big get for The War Between and for this as well. I hope that it's blended in organically and doesn't feel like it's too intrusive on the story. One of my main issues with the War Games in color was the insertion of particularly the New Who soundtracks, like the Master soundtrack. Whenever you see the War Chief, it's so excessive. So I hope that that's not too much the case. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. The original is still there. That's not to say that it won't be, free of criticism. If I do talk about it, I probably won't do an entire video on it. It'll probably be the kind of thing that I mention at the start of a War Between video in general. I'll say, oh yeah, this was also on, and here were my thoughts on this version of the story. But yeah, it's an interesting choice. It makes sense to do something Sea Devil related for the launch of The War Between Land and the Sea, and this is basically our kind of replacement for a colorization this year. The only other time we've seen something like this would be for Pyramids of Mars, but the key difference there was that that was part of a Tales of the TARDIS where you had Ncuti and Millie recounting the episode prior and at the end of it, obviously to tie into Empire of Death. Whether they're going to do something similar here, I don't know. Whether you're going to get Unit opening and closing the story, or I don't know, maybe Casey Manning in there, I don't know, or whether it is just going to be a straight reissue of the episode with obviously the new edits and effects and stuff like that. yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'd assume if it was going to be more different than this, they would have marketed it though. So I assume it is just cut down version, new soundtrack, new effects. So that's interesting. Sorry, I spent way too long on this. Let me move on. We had a new image of the War Between Land and Sea, courtesy of Empire, and they revealed that Barclay is the one human that Salt, who is this Sea Devil, the co-star, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, is like the one human that she trusts. I do love this reply from Nasty Basket. That won't last. He's gay and she's an alien. Very good. Very good. Very good. Oh, I like that joke. But yeah, no, so that's a new image for that. Not much else to say. It is funny that Barclay here, or Russell Tovey, is wearing an orange spacesuit, very similar to the one the Doctor wears. Man, Ncuti Gatwa really does get the short end of the stick and everything. Even bloody Russell Tovey gets to wear the orange spacesuit, for God's sake. But I digress. Bonnie Langford was recently asked whether she will make an appearance in War Between Land and Sea by Radio Times, and she said, I can't tell you anything, I'm sworn to secrecy. Which probably means she's probably in it. Historically, when people will say, I can't tell you, that usually means yes. So I'm assuming that she probably will make an appearance. I mean, it makes sense. She's part of the unit crew at the moment. I do wonder how, like, this show is going to work tonally. That is something that I've been thinking for a while, because looking at that trailer that we all discussed the other day, it was quite dark feeling, and I almost can't imagine, like, the current unit cast and Mel and all of that in a much more serious setting. Does that make sense? Because the version of unit that we've become accustomed to in this era is, like, so hyper exaggerated, so technologically advanced, that the idea of seeing them in a more grounded show kind of maybe feels a bit like tonally inconsistent. But I don't know, you know, I could be wrong and it could blend together seamlessly. But I'll be interested to see whether that is a tension that I feel in the show when I watch it. This is something I want to talk about because I just want to celebrate the man, really. Doctor Who legend Tom Baker, 91, dons iconic Fourth Doctor costume as he receives MBE in style. Doctor Who legend Tom Baker received his MBE recently as he donned the iconic Fourth Doctor costume, complete with the signature striped scarf. The actor, who will celebrate his 92nd birthday in January, headed to Hull Park, Kent on Monday, 10th of November 2025, for the investiture of his MBE, which he received for services to television. Quite frankly, I don't know how this hasn't happened, like, more recently. Look at that picture, though. Look at that. God, it just makes you feel happy, doesn't it? Taking us back in time, Baker smiled from ear to ear as he posed inside a replica of his TARDIS with his scarf draped around him and his MBE pinned to his lapel, which was presented to him by His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Kent, Lady Coleraine. Friends and foes were also in attendance, as a well-behaved Dalek and trusty pup K9 can be seen on standby in photos. Oh, look at that. In more snaps, Baker can be seen donning a sharp blue suit and a poppy to mark Remembrance Day. Last year, it was announced that Baker would be recognised for his services to television following his iconic run as the Doctor from 1974 to 1981, which has gone down in history as a golden age of the show. Oh, I'm so happy for him. Look at him. Oh, I'm so happy for him. I also saw pictures of him in the season 18 costume, but I don't see them here. Maybe they're somewhere else. I'll see if I can have a look in the edit. But yeah, the fact that he also apparently wore two costumes for this is just very fun. And the fact that he is so, like, ready to just jump back into costume all these years later, it just warms your heart, doesn't it? I mean, again, as I've said before, I'm shocked that something like this hasn't happened sooner. Like, as far as I'm concerned, give him a knighthood, as far as I'm concerned. What's the point in having a royal family if we can't, you know, give knighthoods to cool people? And Tom Baker is definitely one of those people. Like, yeah, one of the most iconic sort of characters in television, the Fourth Doctor in specific, is a cultural icon, an institution, and I think that it's so good to see that be recognised and Tom Baker's part in that be recognised. So yeah, there's not much else to say, just congratulations to Tom Baker, and I absolutely love these photos. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So you may have already seen this. I neglected to cover it for a while because I wasn't sure, like, you know, what it was all about, but I'll read it to you anyway. So according to Doctor Who Production News, Bad Wolf set up a new company on November 13th. It's called Bad Wolf TLD. The timing of the creation of this company is right for it to be for the Doctor Who 2026 Christmas special. The name doesn't necessarily correspond to a title, but the L Doctor. So yeah, this is interesting. So Bad Wolf have formed a new company, and it's called Bad Wolf brackets TLD. Now, what's interesting about Bad Wolf's filings for companies previously is that they've quite often corresponded with production of their various shows, and in particular with Doctor Who's case, they filed for the Whoniverse Limited Company for, I believe it was Doctor Who filming, and then Whoniverse 2 was used for War Between the Land and Sea, I do believe. Now, this one's interesting because it doesn't necessarily have anything that would indicate Doctor Who stuff. So yeah, I guess it makes sense that this company is being registered around now, if it is for the Christmas special. Obviously, it could be for another show. I don't think I'm going to rule that out, because obviously it is just a company. They do file these for different shows. However, it's worth saying that Jane Tranter is one of the officers on it, alongside someone called Mary Bridget Furlong as well. But yeah, a lot of people are speculating, if this is for Doctor Who, what does this TLD mean? Which obviously Doctor Who Production News said could be something the L Doctor, so something like the Lost Doctor, the Last Doctor, potentially. Which I don't think it would actually be that. If he did title that, it would probably be clickbait in the same way that he titled the Next Doctor without him actually being the Next Doctor. I highly doubt that Billie Piper will be the Last Doctor. Yeah, so setting up a, filming company is pretty much like standard for like every filming block. As I said, it happened for Doctor Who and The War Between. So it does make sense for this new commission to get a new company, if that's what this is. A lot of people have said that maybe it's to do with top level domain, but that's just to do with a method of structuring the internet and like web pages. And I don't think they would need to set up a whole new company just for a web page. Chances are it would be for television production, specifically because if you go actually into the filing, it says nature of business, television program production activities. So this is definitely for television production. Again, whether it is for that next special and whether this is any kind of indication, I don't know. I don't think that Billie Piper will be the Last Doctor, though. Let me put that out there. Lost Doctor could potentially work, though. That could potentially work. Maybe Billie Piper isn't actually the 16th Doctor, and the special revolves around finding the actual lost 16th Doctor, who, for some reason, has swapped places with Rose. I don't know. This is incredibly speculative on my end. However, you may recall that a few days ago, I covered a rumour that Paul McGann was basically spotted at Bad Wolf Studios, and a lot of people were speculating, could this be for Doctor Who, could it be for a different project, etc, etc, etc. Well, I hadn't seen these until today, but two separate individuals have come out saying, a friend of mine was at Camber Sands on Wednesday, 12th of November, Doctor Who was being filmed. Paul McGann in his Night of the Doctor costume, along with the TARDIS. I pressed for details, but he couldn't say much more. That was from Cleo Mortimer. And then Andrew Morris chimes in, an acquaintance of mine who worked on this Doctor Who project, and confirms filming took place at Camber Sands that day. Paul McGann performed in his Guardians of the Edge costume, basically the same, costume, the Night of the Doctor, they're the same, and the TARDIS was present. Ever professional, my acquaintance refused to spill the beans any further when I offered to get the next round in. So as Doctor Who Production News points out here as well, Camber Sands is actually the location where they filmed the conflict between the Sixth Doctor and the Valeyard. So that's an interesting little fact. I don't think that actually means that Paul McGann's going to be facing off with the Valeyard or anything like that in this scene. More likely it's just a reuse of a location, because Doctor Who does that all the time. But then there's also the question of, if this is happening, which multiple people have now said that they have spotted it, what actually is it? Is it for the special? Is it for some kind of like Blue Peter, Children in Need, comic relief type of deal, some sort of short? Or is it, something else? I don't know. That's the interesting thing. The one thing that gives me slight pause is that I feel like we probably would have seen some sort of pictures if he was out filming in a public space. Obviously, Camber Sands is, I believe, open to the public. However, same time, who's going to be on a beach in the freezing cold in November? If they don't know that something's going on necessarily. I couldn't see any warnings in advance that they was going to be filming in Camber Sands when I looked on their Facebook pages and stuff. But if you were there around November 12th, let me know if you saw anything. So yeah, so Cleo Mortimer says, Thanks, Andrew. This confirms my friend's story. He wasn't involved in the production and just happened to be in the area. I wonder what was being filmed. Blu-ray bonus material. Children in need. Another Guardians of the Edge cameo for the 2026 special. Yeah, very interesting. Blu-ray bonus, potentially. The difficulty with that is I find it unlikely that we're going to get like a TV movie Blu-ray release in some fashion just because of like all of the rights issues. Obviously, that has been released on Blu-ray, but I doubt we're going to get a Wilderness Years Blu-ray box set. I could be wrong, and they could do that, and that could be what it's for. But it just strikes me as unlikely. But then the other thing is, if it is for the new special, then they are very far ahead with this stuff, unless it's just a minor part in it, and they're filming with Paul McGann before they can film with Piper. I don't know. Like they say, it could be a re-emergence of the Guardians of the Edge concept, although it is worth saying that both of these individuals have said that the TARDIS was also present, implying that it does take place actually within reality, within the context of the show, and not within the Doctor's own head. So at this point, who knows? You know what I mean? I'm just, again, take this with a massive grain of salt, but the reason I'm covering it is because two people have actually said, filming at Canvas Hands on the same day, they both corroborated that they've heard the same day there was filming. Again, what was the nature of it? Who knows? But it is interesting, right? We had the formation of a company on the 13th, following suspected filming on the 12th. Very, very interesting. So it could be, and I'm putting my tinfoil hat on here, tinfoil hat moment incoming, that this company isn't actually for the 2026 special, but rather a Paul McGann side project, hence the name not necessarily being like dubbed, you know, something immediately obvious. Maybe the Lost Doctor, or, you know, something like that could actually refer to the 8th Doctor being the Doctor who was lost on TV because we never got to see him. Or it could just be something completely different, and I'm just coming up with various anagrams, and my mind is going insane. But let me know what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you do, and I will see you later.